On Monday, April the 8th, millions of Americans will put on their sun-safe glasses, they'll point their eyes to the sky and take in the beauty and wonder of a once-in-a-lifetime experience, a total solar eclipse. But what if I told you that your eyes aren't the only way for you to observe the eclipse? Today on Radio 101, we're going to tell you how an ordinary AM radio just like this one may be all that you need to experience this historic event. Let's tune in.
Radio 101.
Our sun has a profound effect on the world around us. Quite simply, life as we know it wouldn't exist without it. But did you know that the sun's influence can extend to things like radio waves? While not all radio waves are, those in the medium wave or AM radio band are strongly influenced by the interaction of solar radiation with the upper regions of our atmosphere every single day. And it is because of that interaction that our upcoming solar eclipse on April the 8th gives us a great chance to directly observe the solar influence of AM radio signals. First, a quick lesson on exactly how radio waves can be influenced by our sun. It all has to do with the upper reaches of our atmosphere in an area called the ionosphere. The ionosphere sits somewhere between about 80 and 600 kilometers above the surface of our planet, and it contains layers of electrons, and these layers are created by ionization from solar radiation. There are multiple layers that form every single day, and some of these allow for reflection of radio waves back down to Earth, enabling long-distance reception of radio signals. One of these layers, the D layer, actually absorbs radio signals that are transmitted by AM radio stations. Now, it's only present during the day when the solar radiation is at its peak of influence on our ionosphere. At night, this layer disappears and allows those same AM radio signals to reach higher into the ionosphere and reflect back down to Earth. This is why AM radio signals travel much further at night than they do during the day. Without the D layer there to absorb these signals, AM radio stations can be heard from listeners hundreds, even thousands of miles away. So what does that mean for the upcoming eclipse? Well, as the Earth rotates and the sun rises in the morning, it begins the process of forming this D layer. And it's not something that happens all at once or uniformly. You'll have pockets of the D layer that are thicker and more robust, other areas where it's thinner, and other areas where it doesn't even form at all until later in the day. The inverse is actually what happens in the evening as the sun sets. When the sun disappears over the horizon, it begins the process of breaking down the D layer. And again, this doesn't happen all at once or uniformly. This results in little pockets or gaps where AM radio stations are able to break through, get to the upper layers of the ionosphere, and then reflect back down to listeners at much greater distances. And that will be the science at work during our eclipse on April the 8th. As the moon slowly begins to pass between the Earth and the sun, it will block out more and more solar radiation and kickstart that exact same process that we see every evening of breaking down the D layer. This will allow for those pockets and gaps in the D layer to form and allow for some AM radio signals to break through and reflect off the upper levels of the ionosphere and allow for listeners at much further distances to hear them during the daytime than they normally would be able to do. But that's only part of what makes this eclipse a unique experience for AM radio listeners. Since, as we learned earlier, AM radio signals travel further at night than they do during the day, a lot of stations in the United States actually have to power down or change their antenna pattern, or in some cases even sign off entirely at night in order to protect from causing interference from other radio stations. This usually happens during that same time that the D layer is in process of breaking down. And if the timing is right, this actually allows listeners to be able to catch these stations before they make their daily changes. During the eclipse, however, there will be no powering down. No antenna pattern changes, no signing off. These stations will continue to operate at their full daytime power. That means since timing is no longer an issue, as the eclipse moves along, more and more of the D layer begins to break down, and that will allow more people from greater distances to hear these stations than would normally be possible during a normal day. Now, the effect of the eclipse will obviously be greatest for those who live within the path of totality. They'll have the greatest amount of attenuation of solar radiation and the greatest amount of breakdown of that D layer of the atmosphere. But even those who are just outside of the totality path, should experience at least some effect on their local AM radio band. Now, as I said earlier, not all radio waves are impacted in the same way by the sun's radiation. And because of this and some other characteristics, you actually won't notice during the eclipse any impact whatsoever on your local FM band. The AM band, though, should give most listeners a chance to hear some radio stations that you might not normally be able to pick up. So before you put on your sun-safe glasses and look to the sky, you may want to make sure you bring an AM radio with you. Turn it on and listen for some frequencies that don't have any stations on them. And then as the eclipse moves along, tune to those frequencies and listen as the signals begin to fill the band. And try to see if you can identify some of those stations and where they're located, and be sure to let us know down in the comments below of some of your best catches. If you want to learn more about the hobby of listening for distant AM and FM radio stations, it's also called DXing, be sure to check out our other videos right here on the channel. If you found this video to be helpful, we would appreciate a thumbs up, and a comment is always helpful to ensure our videos are able to reach more interested viewers. And be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are available. Until next time, keep spinning those dials.
Through crashes of static in quiet hours, we listen. In languages we can scarcely understand, and of places we have only visited in our dreams, we listen. Incessantly, we perfect our array of aerials, receivers, and resources. We refine our skills and our techniques so that we might listen. We are DX Central, and we're all about radio. Visit us at dxcentralonline.com or check us out on YouTube. Search DX Central.